Back on Big Ten today, Minnesota's Darius Taylor only played in 6 games last year, but when he was out there, there was literally no running back in the nation who ate up more yardage. Number one with better than 133 yards per game. Now, he had injury issues last year, which is why he only played 6 games. He got banged up in a portion of practice that was open to the media last week. PJ Fleck didn't really elaborate on his status for the opener against North Carolina, so that's something to monitor, obviously, throughout the week. And, Yogi, this is a good measuring stick game for Minnesota. This is a solid North Carolina team, one that beat them handily a year ago. Now you get the game in Minneapolis. What are you focused on?
Well, thankfully, Drake May is not playing for Carolina, as well as the 5 offensive linemen in front of him. We're seeing what he's doing in the preseason, and I think that's going to bode well for Minnesota and their new-look defense. So this is a defense that has to show out, especially in the red zone and on third down. So I want to see what exotic packages do they throw at potentially 2 quarterbacks they'll see for Carolina. Offensively, of course, we want to see Max Brosmer. What does this transfer do? A chip on his shoulder. We've seen all the things all summer long of how he's leaned into his teammates and how they're following his guidance and leadership. Now let's go see it on the field. I expect this offense to be dramatically better. If their lead back is out, more may fall on his shoulders, but definitely in critical D&Ds, it's going to fall on his shoulders. He's going to have to elevate this team. They're going to go in this new look league as far as I think their quarterback takes them.
Yeah, I think one of the things you notice about this Minnesota team traditionally under PJ Fleck is he's had some running backs that are going to be able to step up if they need to be able to do that. But I'd say the important part is to make sure that they can get off the field in third down situations. 12 of 17 last year. I know it's a different offense for North Carolina, but you've got to be able to address the third down situation.
And just in general, defense. They took a step back last year. Corey Heatherman comes in as the new defensive coordinator. They took a step back. They went from being fabulous to being solid defensively. But PJ Fleck's had better than solid defenses historically. So interested to see what that group looks like. And we mentioned Max Brosmer. He is one of 9 transfer quarterbacks. It was a good chance of starting the season opener in the Big Ten. You see some of the QB newcomers here. It's a list that includes Will Howard at Ohio State, Dylan Gabriel, of course, at Oregon, Washington's Will Rogers on there, Michigan State's Aiden Childs at the very front of that list. And Yogi, as we move to Friday's action, Michigan State, really intriguing team. We just saw them last week. They were a really bad offensive team last year. In fact, if you go to scoring average in the Power 5, Iowa was the only team in the power conferences that averaged fewer points per game than Michigan State. But a whole new year, obviously new coaching staff and Jonathan Smith. You've got Childs, who you saw during his time at Oregon State, coming over. What do we think of Michigan State and where they stand as they try to rebuild this thing and get it headed in the right direction again?
Well, it's a fun matchup against Tom Herman and company. And I think Aiden Childs looks like some of those quarterbacks that Coach Herman coached when he was at Ohio State. I mean, Aiden Childs, to me, if you took an anonymous poll among all 18 teams and said you can have this dude in the next 2 or 3 years, I bet 90% of the coaches would take him. Right? Take away Dylan Gabriel, maybe take away Dylan Raiola, but I think he's that type of player. He was that dynamic in high school. He had flashes at Oregon State. I think being around him, we saw his ability. I had practice that day, talking to the staff. They rave about his accuracy, his acumen. If you saw social media, you know his confidence. I think he said, hey, take the over if you're looking at this game. So I'm a big fan of watching him compete. I just think to temper expectations. It's 61 new players. I don't care who you are. It could be Jonathan Smith. It could be Pete Carroll. It could be Bill Belichick. It's still hard to acclimatize to a dramatically new roster in year one with all the turnover and even turmoil they went through. So I think it's going to be a process. Step one is this game. I don't think it's going to be easy. Charlie Fry, the offensive coordinator, you remember him from Akron and, of course, in the NFL. Rock Bellantoni is their defensive coordinator. He's been all over the country in college football. He will call an aggressive game. So Aiden Childs, he'll have to play more than, I think, the 91 career snaps he's played thus far in his young career. How does he navigate when it gets hard? When there's lulls? Those will be all the things he'll learn and grow from. But you're going to be looking at, I think, an emerging star in college football.
And I think that's one of the keys, to be patient as a fan, to be patient as a coaching staff. It's a little bit different when you know you're only going to get a couple of series in a game and then be able to run out there and be able to handle it. You obviously know in most cases what you're going to be up against. Now he's going to be out there each and every down, and it's going to be critical for him to be able to be patient, not try to make the big plays, take exactly what defenses are giving him, and then he can have the success and build the confidence and the momentum that you need to build in young quarterbacks.
A lot of room for improvement. In fact, a lot of room for improvement on both sides of the ball, frankly. They were bottom 2 in the Big Ten last year, both total offense and total defense. As you guys were talking about, a ton of new faces. So fascinated to see how it all comes together, starting with that game against FAU. So we have that game here on the Big Ten Network. Over on FS1, they have a Friday night game as well. It is Wisconsin in action. They will be taking on Western Michigan. It will be the Badger debut for Tyler Van Dyke, former ACC Rookie of the Year in Miami. Up and down career there. In fairness, he went through 3 OCs in 3 seasons. Now he comes to Madison. He'll work with Phil Longo. Remember, Longo's offense averaged less than 24 points per game last year. That was the fewest for the Badgers in 19 years. Pretty tough schedule, including Alabama, as we know, in the non-conference. It feels to me like, Yogi, they're kind of banking on, hey, year one, we're getting our feet wet in the new system, new offense, new defense, new head coach, a lot of changes, and kind of banking on this notion that year two, everyone has a better sense of what we're doing, and you improve just by virtue of familiarity.
Yeah, I think the big takeaways from talking to you guys and watching the training camp shows is this team feels as though they have a foundation that's pretty solid. And I think when you're talking about the air raid offense that you just referenced, it's really important. And Howard, you and I talk about this all the time on our bus as we're traveling around the Midwest. It's a philosophy, not a scheme. Everybody's air raid does not look like Mike Leach's or Lincoln Riley's or Cliff Kingsbury. Same deal here at Wisconsin. So for Tyler Van Dyke, it's all about, for him, getting the ball out and getting it out efficiently, because their opponent, led by Lance Taylor, the head coach, his background is running the rock. Christian McCaffrey, a notable guy that he coached at Stanford. He coached him in the NFL in Carolina, and they've got a good run game as well. And the way you beat the air raid is you force a couple 3-and-outs, you run the football, and limit possessions. So right now, if you're Wisconsin heading into this ball game, to me, it's all about efficiency within this scheme. Checking the ball down, getting the ball out of your hands quickly, not taking poor sacks. And Tyler Van Dyke, he's got a lot of experience. I look forward to watching a reemergence of him, probably the better version of himself than what we saw at his most recent stop, because confidence gets impacted at the quarterback position. Now, based on what you guys shared, what we've learned from talking to people there, his confidence should be at an extremely high level. And in this game, he'll get tested early, get the ball out, keep the sticks moving, get a couple early scores, because I don't think you'll have a lot of possessions.
I think they'll be able to really hang their hat on the defensive side. Coach Tressel, I think, continues to do an unbelievable job of developing that team. He didn't have his entire system in last year, but he started to get there. And as we saw him this summer, I think they're much closer. I think on the offensive side, when you talk about Yogi getting rid of the football, it's going to be important. You can't take sacks. They've got to be able to continue to move the ball and help their defense out.
A little bit lower expectations than we're used to with the Badgers. Last 4 years, they've started the season ranked and finished unranked. That won't happen this year because they do not start the system ranked. An unranked Wisconsin team heading into the year.